I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to set the stage for this because part of what we do here at PAFOW events is have very real, authentic discussions, and that's the intention to do so with some very prominent, not only thought leaders, but people who have actually done the work. So without further ado, Heather, you want to start? Introduce yourself quick.
Sure. Ooh, good. I wasn't sure it was on. Hi, everyone. My name's Heather Whiteman. I've been doing people analytics in some form or fashion for a couple decades now. I came into it by realizing that you could use data to create good outcomes. So I was really drawn in by research that would assess for bias and unfairness and then actually be able to apply it. And then my career just kind of went from there to more analytics, more workforce planning, learning development, HR, technology. I was most recently with General Electric, GE, where I led multiple talent areas, including people analytics. And then just in the last few months, I stepped away from that role to focus on teaching. So now I teach people analytics at UC Berkeley, statistics for managers at UC Davis now, and actually I'll be doing a course with Stanford. Those both last two things are brand new. But the exciting part of that is there is so much demand for people analytics in this that now there's these opportunities to teach and bring more people into the community and field. So I'm really excited to take what I've been able to practice and now share it with others.
Yeah. Thanks, Heather. Audrey?
Hi, I'm Audrey Ciccone. I work currently with Queensland Health. My analytics journey started, far too many decades ago when I took my HR certification after my psych degree. They started talking about survivor analysis in armies and how you need to have so many privates to make generals, and all of a sudden everything about HR made sense to me. My eyes were bright and shiny and I thought, this is cool. And then I went in my real job and I put the binder on the shelf. But when I started consulting in 2000, one of my first clients said, look, we're an accounting firm. We don't just need the recommendation, we need the data. And I basically pulled the binder off the shelf and my analytics career started again with basic demographic analysis. But really in the last 5 years, I've focused specifically on analytics, first in consulting and teaching others, but I've had stints of 18 months at Rio Tinto. I've been about the same now at Queensland Health, and so it's continuing on. Right now I manage a team of 5 people within the HR Business Intelligence team, which is a larger team of 16 within Queensland Health. We handle both everything from reporting and insights through our governance and our data and our systems.
Yeah, thank you. Liam?
Hi, I'm Liam Bax-Brangan. I work at Programmed. The official title is Remuneration and HR Analytics Manager, but basically I've fallen into being the HR with numbers guy at Programmed. I guess contrasting a little bit with the other esteemed guests here, I'm relatively new to the field, so I started my career as a tax consultant and then decided eventually to head out into industry and become a remuneration specialist, and then kind of fell into people analytics. Actually, I kind of fell into the reporting part of it, and then I thought, well, how can I add a little bit of value here? And started seeing some discussions online and different fora, and thought, well, this seems like a pretty good crowd to fall into, so here I am.
Well, thanks for being here, all three of you. And so this discussion, again, is going to be very fundamental, and I don't want to suggest it's going to be basic, but it's going to be very pragmatic. And so let me start it off by saying, I first became passionate, shall I say, about this notion, first who, then what, around 2001 when Good to Great came out, Jim Collins, and he talked about getting the right people on the bus, and it was very intriguing. However, like on page 14, he said, well, forget about employee engagement. If you're thinking about employee engagement, you're crazy, you're wasting your money. I'm like, dude, man, I thought we were on the same page. I thought we had something going on. But he went on to say, the real challenge is to hire engaged people and do your best not to piss them off, not to disengage them. But focusing on that first two, then what? I find in our discipline, not many have thought about that end customer. Like, who are we trying to affect? And in turn, asking, do we have the right data? Are we doing the right analytics to affect that outcome that they desire, not that we desire? And again, there's a balance here because sometimes they don't know what questions to ask, right? So Audrey, if I can start with you, since you've been in this discipline here in Australia for a number of years, what's your thinking about that notion? Who is your end customer, and how do you understand the demand before you go and do work?
Yeah. So your end customer, so I'll answer that two different ways. Your end customer
I'm going to come join you.
is ultimately the employee. When I joined Queensland Health, they were going through a process of what's our vision, values, and actually Queensland Health has a very strong vision, which is for Queensland to have amongst the healthiest citizens in Australia by the year 2026. However, our HR goal is make HR easy. And I can understand make HR easy, but our goal should be the goal of the organization, which is if we anticipate having the healthiest citizens by 2026, why can't we have the healthiest employees by 2026? We really need to fully align that. And I don't think it fully hit home until you came to Brisbane in November and talked really about how we can really impact on the wellness and the health of people, and really it has to come down to the people. So that is our ultimate customer, but right now our customer really is about who are the leaders who are prepared to invest. So Queensland Health is on a journey, and the journey is much slower. We are still very metrics-based, very reporting-based. We've got some lovely dashboards, but we are still just tracking historic things and only in aggregated levels. We are not slicing our data to understand the depth in anything. But what I have found, though, is you actually need to have sponsors, because if I am going to go and do some in-depth analysis, that's going to take me months to do, and I come up with a solution, and people nod and shake their heads and say, that's lovely, but they aren't going to do anything about it, then I have wasted time and resources. So I really need to get people sold on the opportunity first. And if they are committed to that opportunity, then they will support the work that it's going to take to get there. Because if you... I have a theory about don't put anything on the dashboard unless there's an initiative behind it. Same thing. Unless there's actually an initiative that has buy-in, then it's great research to do, but it's going to end up on a shelf.
Yeah, thanks for that. Heather, your thoughts on this?
Well, I know you. I know you'll let me answer however I want, even if it's direct. But on the who, maybe not so much even who's the client, but building a bit on Audrey's point, I actually think that part of the who is about bringing those people with you. It's not always just selling to other HR people to pay attention to this. I found that actually there's a bit of a fear and a hesitance to do analytics or to use it. There's a bit of I'm not a data person and I don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. So some people aren't necessarily joining in, not because they don't want to be part of it, but because they have a hesitance and they think, oh, well, I'm not the data person. I'm not the HR data person. Like Liam is the, HR data person. And so they may not realize that actually the most powerful way and the who should be the whole team. So you don't have to run your own crazy analytics to be analytically minded, to apply the outcomes of people analytics into the roles. And so it's really identifying your teammates and that those people in the broader arena of HR can be part of the people analytics team. Even if they may not have what we'd call the crazy data skills, they can still apply. They can still tell the story. They can still leverage. And there's a lot of power to be had there. So when I think about the who, I think about it broader than the people who come to this conference. I think about how we can inspire other people to join us in what we're doing and not to be afraid to really pick up the ideas and apply them.
Yeah, thanks for that. Liam, your thoughts on your internal customers and how you engage them?
So I guess... you're right. There's probably a couple of layers that we all need to keep in mind, or at least I certainly do. And one of those is the internal HR teams who aren't necessarily analytically minded. So that's bringing those people on a journey, making them feel really confident with the tools that you're giving them. So that then they can go out and help you with the second level of people who you're trying to influence, who is ultimately the employees that that are affected by a lot of the initiatives that we have in HR. And then hopefully they can then influence the next level, who are ultimately the customers of the organisation that we work for. Because those people are going to be the ultimate recipients of whatever effect we provide with the initiatives that we put out there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And just to go a level deeper, because I don't know anyone who has this quote unquote figured out in our discipline, is because inherent in what you just said, or embedded rather, is I heard HR business partners, I heard employees / workers, I heard executives. So, and not all internal customers are weighted equally, and not all want the same thing at the same time. So what I'm getting at, and I'll go back to you, Audrey, is priorities, prioritization. You know, how do you prioritize? Is it the loudest voice in the room jumping up and down? Is it the most senior person? How do you prioritize? And is there a governance model in place, or is it pretty much you and the CHRO or somebody similar saying, this is what we're going to do?
In my current structure, it really is the CHRO who is ultimately the person. So in a government organization with limited resources, we need to make sure that all of our projects are fully aligned to the priorities of the CHRO. So in the last year, we've done a lot of planning. They were more around efficiencies that we were looking at, but we are currently, just in this past week, undertaking a massive stakeholder review to look at some of that historic information that we are providing, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel. We better change the wheel altogether if we need to. So it's stakeholder engagements right now, but ultimately it's that CHRO that is our ultimate customer, because she's the one that determines whether it's a priority or not. And if her priorities shift, she's the one that gets to make the decisions. So in some ways, it's a little out of our hands, but we need to make sure what we're bringing her are some very smart ideas with, and we'll hear Thomas Rasmussen talk about this tomorrow, which is, you can look at an ROI approach to it and say, where's the value in this? I can do some quick things here that are going to have high value. I can do some longer term things that will have high value as well. How do I actually prioritize?
Yeah, thank you. Heather, your thoughts on prioritization?
Yeah, so actually the ROI one, there's kind of two different ways, and I would say it depends on where you're at with your organization. One is, it depends on how big and how many resources your team has, in which case I really like an ROI type-based approach, which is, what's the simplest thing I can do to get the most impact out of it? Now, always ideally aligned to your business goals, your functional goals, but sometimes there's such easy data available, especially if you're newer on the journey, where just looking at some basic analytics or some trends can tell you a lot. And that can have a lot of value with minimal effort. It lets you be more impactful, quicker, faster, and build up a brand and a reputation. But then the second one that I tend to look at is buy-in and alignment with others. So I like to do something that I call building a coalition of the willing. And a lot of times I will genuinely select projects, as long as they're business aligned to goals and objectives that we're aiming for, based on the willingness and the passion of the business leader available to me. And does that mean that there's unfair distribution of, analytics? Yes. But it also means disproportionate championship and vocal, speaking about the results. And what I've found is you have, one individual who's passionate, wants to work with you and wants the value out of the data. And then once their story is out there, all these other people who didn't answer the phone when you called before, all of a sudden they're like, that's cool. I want that? Can you tell me that about my organization? And then you start building a thing. So there's definitely, like, for the team, work on the things that are the fastest, quickest to value. But for your brand, your reputation, your credibility, find yourself some champions, some passionate people to work with, because we do often have the problem. There's so many things we can work on. There's so many things that we can solve. Getting your coalition together can be a really powerful way to pick up speed pretty fast.
Yeah, Liam, feel free to pick up on what was just shared. Also, I'd like to ask, because there's so much we can do in our discipline, right? So many analytical techniques, survival analysis, ONA, structural equation modeling, all this stuff. But just to do it doesn't make any sense. There has to be a business need. So, what are your thoughts on prioritization and making sure you're selecting the appropriate analytical technique or tool to answer a given question or business problem?
I'll expand a little bit on the former question first, because I'll still think about the other one. But I think also with prioritising things, you can probably take into account the resources that you actually have available to you. Being somewhat of a one-man band, you kind of have to think a little bit about how you can get extra resources in, because I like to think I'm great, but I'm not that great. I can't do all the things that
I think you're great too.
Thanks. So what else can you do? What else can you bring in to make more of the projects a possibility? One of the things that we've been trying to do recently is pull in some academic researchers to come in and help with specific projects. That's something that I don't really have time to do myself. There's some really great high-impact projects that we can do, and there's a lot of people who would be really passionate about doing it, but nobody's really thought that it's possible. Having somebody else be able to come in, run the meat part of the project means that I can concentrate on building up some of that stakeholder engagement and building up some of the other things that you need just to get that project done. So that could be one part of it. And then
may I pause you right there?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt it. Just a show of hands. Anyone else working with academic institutions to augment their internal capability? So a handful of you. Because my question pointedly, there are a lot of people doing their dissertations. There's a lot of people who want to work with the sample size, the large sample size, and do their own thing. So kind of going a level deeper on that is, how do you select? Do you have to vet the researchers who are coming to you, then put forth what you believe is most aligned with business need?
So I think the way that we're still piloting it ourselves, so it's not like we've got a long and storied history of working with academia. It's more we've gone out to some people and said, look, we've got this really interesting project. We think it'll be really high impact for our business. We think that you could get some really great research material out of it. Do you want to come and do it? And so we then it's almost like an RFP for academics. And so presumably, hopefully at least one person decides that they want to do that. And if there's more than one, we'll pick which one works for us. And then we'll take them through it. So that's we've come up with a project and have put it out there. We haven't necessarily had other people come to us with ideas for projects, but I imagine as the relationship grows, you probably end up getting some of that sort of stuff, which would be great.
So there was an idea tossed around, it has to be 2-3+ years ago, about effectively a marketplace for projects, for academic projects. So employers put out their needs, and I don't believe it's materialized yet, but if anyone has an idea, I'm actually looking in the mirror right now. But anyway, did you get your second point across, or was it captured in what you just shared? Because I interrupted you rudely again.
No, it's fine. We can let it.
You can let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, so where I want to go in the interest of time, but also in the interest of value, because I'm really curious about this. And yeah, Heather, we'll come back to you if you don't mind, mix up the order a little bit. Your ideal future state. So let's say 12, 24 months, so not very long horizon. What do you see shifting in terms of what we now call people analytics, or what do you want to happen? What do you hope happens?
Two takes on that. What I think will happen very near term is we are seeing quite a bit going on in the regulations and standards space right now. So human capital standards are becoming a thing. There's some new international standard organizations around human capital standards, which is fantastic. It can create some consistency. It's early stages. I'm not saying it's all perfect as of yet, but it is a great starting point to move employees and people from where they've been on financial statements, which is they have just been treated as a cost. Employees have only ever been seen as a financial negative to organizations. No wonder we have a hard time pushing through some of our initiatives and our plans. These standards will start to provide the opportunity to look at people as value. I mean, think about all the companies today. Think about, any industry. Do you think there's any company at all if there's no people? Like, that's not how companies work. So these standards are going to be great. We actually think that maybe in the next year or so that there might actually be requirements and regulations asking for that to be included. I think that is going to explode the people analytics space. Nobody's really talking about it right now because regulations are so boring. Like, who wants to talk about regulations? But they will create this influx. There's going to be this demand. Companies are going to be looking around going, who knows how to analyze this? Who knows how to study this? And they're going to find all of you. You're going to be rock stars. It's going to be awesome. And then you'll be able to go from there. So that's sort of the shorter term, what I think will happen. And then what I want to have happen is we are getting so good with some of this stuff. I know organizations are still struggling to get their, HR analytics maturity up, but on the more kind of advanced side, we have all these tools and technology that can build and do amazing things. So if we can build algorithms that can detect bias, we can start to remove bias. If we can identify equal opportunities for people, we can start to provide those opportunities to people. We can start increasing social justice, inclusivity, and really bringing about powerful cultures that the data and the technology to pull it off is just phenomenal. So I'm excited about when we start being able to use people analytics, not just to understand the organization, but to actually make work opportunities better for people is where I hope and expect we will all be soon.
Yeah, thanks for that, Audrey.
So from my perspective, there's things that I'd like to see and there's models I'd like to do, but I think what I'll talk to in scope of this particular answer is over the last 5 years as I've moved around training and things, the one thing I've noticed is, at least in other areas of the Asia Pacific, that there's lots of investment in systems, whereas in Australia, I think we're still very systems poor. Our organizations either don't see the value in investing in systems, or there's too many disparate systems. But I think we actually are almost going to go through a leap. You don't need to invest in a system. We need to find the right kinds of systems that attract or that can capture the things we need. And I think we're going to change the way we talk about systems. We're not going to say, I need a system that does this, 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 and this, and this. What we need to do is we need to go to our suppliers and say, I need a system that can handle this, but how easy is it going to be to get the data back out so that I can use it? And if the first thing that they say is, I'm sorry, you can't get your data back out to integrate it with other things, that's a non-starter for me. So instead of going the whole HCM, need to put everything in one place, I'm more than happy to keep on the ad hoc thing, as long as I have an understanding that the data can come back out in a way that I can manage it. So what I really want to see happening and needs to happen is that we move into more of a data integration perspective on how we handle our information so that it becomes easier and we can be tool agnostic in terms of getting information into whether it's a data lake or different kinds of databases so that we can begin to use the data in a way that we want to with smart tools that can begin to bring those pieces together. And I think we'll hear from the One Model people. I'm not selling their stuff, I just happen to know who they are, but that's really what it's the vision of what we need. And, you know, it can happen in many different ways. It can happen through Power BI, but you still need Power BI to get it from here, here, and here. And unfortunately, we still live in a cube technology. Oh, well, that's in that cube, and that's in that cube, and none of the two shall meet. Well, get them out of the darn cube, put them somewhere where I can use them, because I can't do anything new and exciting if it's in a cube, and I can't do anything at all with unstructured data. So we need to see a technology shift and forget the whole investment in a X million billion dollar system. Let's go to small systems that actually provide the data back to us in a way that we can use it.
I love it.
Sorry, long answer.
No, love it. Thank you. Liam?
Yeah, basically echoing that. I mean, we're already seeing with our organisation that we are moving and looking to move from big systems that say they do everything and do a couple of things really well, and the other things at a maybe not so great level, to a number of different best of breed systems, and then working out how we can aggregate the data that we get out of that so that we can make some really good insights happen. I guess the other thing that that I think we'll probably see is a lot more integration between what has traditionally been HR data and what has traditionally been organisational data. Because I think that's, in a lot of ways, that's what a lot of the goals are for most of our projects that we run. And I think that's becoming a lot more systematic, and that's where we need to be in the near term. Beyond that, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I love it because, again, if I didn't share it earlier, I cite a Chinese proverb very often: the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. So when we talk about HR data, it's all, it's HR data. Yeah, that's over here. But when we talk about organizational data, organizational health data, it has a different mindset shift and a different value proposition associated with it. That's what I'm hearing there. So our time's going fast. So closing comments, Ian, how about you start with you and we'll finish with Heather. I'm pretty excited about where it's heading in Australia. As Audrey was saying, I think we're going to see over the next couple of years a real leap in the capabilities that we have, and I think it's great that we've got conferences like this and other fora around for people analytics people to sort of build and learn off each other. I think Heather, you mentioned that one of the things that we like to try and do is build off what other people have done, and that's and I think building community is a great way to help us get further quicker. Yeah.
So
Thanks for that. Audrey?
Yeah, from my perspective, I just want to build upon the organizational data as well. So there's only 3 ways a company makes money. They sell something, they spend less, or they create better efficiency. From an HR data perspective, we can impact variability and risk. So if we can help our organizations understand in that operational and people crossover, where in my operational trajectory do people have a positive or negative influence? And if we can be help through data to inform what makes a better outcome for the organization through the right kinds of people versus the wrong kinds of people, that's really where we have value. And unless we're having that conversation at an organizational wide level, integrating HR data, we can have a seat at the table, but we won't actually be adding value to the business. So we need to take that on. And although it's not in common lexicon out there, my guiding principle is the iNostics value pyramid, which at the peak is basically how am I having an operational impact in the organization. So we can look at people in groups of stuff, we can look at HR efficiencies, we can look at individual differences, but unless we have that connection between operational outcomes and people and be able to tell our organizations how people are going to have that impact, we haven't done our jobs. We need to find a way of linking it, because I can tell you what your sick turnover is going to be and, you know, this, that, and the next thing, but if I'm talking about an operational outcome, I've got different ears listening.
Yeah, love it. Heather?
I guess the one thing I'd want to say to everyone is just join the people analytics community. I know that sounds weird because it's a room of people who came to a people analytics conference, but I always still meet people who think, whoa, hey. I always meet people who say, oh, I'm not really one of you, I'm just here listening. Or, well, but I don't really have deep data expertise, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. And but you are. I think anyone who has a passion around the topic can help the people analytics thing be amazing. You don't have to know statistics. You don't have to do data science. You don't have to do any of that to actually be part of and do the people analytics community. And I think people don't get that. They think they have to be an analyst or they have to do that. And don't get me wrong, if you got those skills, kudos. But it's a community. It's about doing things with data. It's not about you being a data person. And so welcome others into the community. If you have that imposter syndrome that people seem to have, where they're like, but I'm not really, and just, you have my permission. You are a people analyst, like you are. And so just embrace it, enjoy it. And to Liam's comment, the community is amazing. There's somebody struggling at about whatever level it is you're at, whether you're really mature, you're brand new starting out, and the people are super friendly. They will like share their experiences, their comments, they will help you out along the way. So just be part of the community. It's a really good one.
No, thank you, and thank you all. Super appreciate it. Give them a round of applause. We will. All right.